Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy July 1st. Thank you for joining me. It's been a little while since I've done a live webinar, but again, thank you for joining us. I'm Helen with One Structural, and today our webinar is going to be all about our services that we provide and how it can help you and your HOA or multifamily property. So I'm going to be sharing my screen, which has a presentation that covers some highlights about our services and steps that you have to do in case there's a mandate or a requirement in your city. So alrighty, if you have any questions, please add them to the chat, and I should hopefully see them when I am done sharing my screen, or maybe during, I'm not sure, but I'll do my best to get to them and answer everybody's questions. Alrighty, so hopefully everybody can see this. So to begin, again, I'm Helen with One Structural. We are an engineering and construction firm, and we provide all sorts of services that I'm going to get into today. Sometimes people know us by our individual division names, which are Balcony One, ADU One, and Retrofit One. They are all registered names under our main business name, One Structural, just to clear up any confusion. Balcony One specializes in everything regarding SB 721 and SB 326, the new balcony and deck inspection laws. ADU One specializes in accessory dwelling units for multifamily properties as well as single family. And Retrofit One does seismic retrofitting, so soft story seismic retrofitting for multifamily properties. This applies to apartments and HOA condos if you have a soft story building. And there are several more cities that have jumped in this year requiring it, and a couple are in the works. Most likely will be required, I'm thinking by next year. So I'll get into that as well. So as I already mentioned, these are our services. Seismic retrofitting for soft story buildings. I'll get into a little bit more detail about what a soft story building is, just in case you have a portfolio or you have a building and you're wondering if it needs it. SB 721 and SB 326, which is the balcony and deck and walkway inspection and any subsequent repair law. We do everything for SB 721 and SB 326, the inspections, obviously, and any subsequent repairs. We do repairs outside of SB 721 and SB 326, structural repairs, foundation problems, stucco problems, cracks, leaks, that type of stuff, walkways. Whatever it is, we do those types of repairs. We do walkthroughs and analyses as well if you need to determine where the source of the leak is coming from, where are these cracks coming from, what are the problems. So we do all of those types of repairs. And then we also provide just general community maintenance, especially if you're an HOA with many buildings, or if you just have one building and you need painting for the entire building. And again, general community maintenance, cracks, stucco, stuff like that is what we do. So to briefly get into the areas of service that we provide, I will start with one of our oldest divisions, soft story retrofitting. So if you have a building that looks like the one in this slide, this is a building in Westwood, one of our earlier projects from, I want to say 10 years ago, 2015. That is what a soft story building looks like. Parking on the ground floor, AKA tuck under parking, with dwelling units above. So these are the types of buildings that were flagged as weak and vulnerable because of the way that ground floor was built. Typically prior to 1980, they had more of a what was called like a flagpole design for those existing pipe columns with just like a concrete pad footing underneath for the foundation. Those are what would bend or crack in the case of an earthquake. So that was not done to current code, which did change after like the late 70s, early 80s, depending on your jurisdiction. So seismic retrofitting is structurally reinforcing the building to make it more resistant to that lateral force of an earthquake. So this picture here is actually, I'll go back, is this building in the process of getting retrofitted. This is us adding a moment frame. What you see here are 2 columns and a beam, kind of like like an N upside down U shape that gets affixed to the building. Some areas of stucco was removed to expose the framing of the building. And this is kind of embedded into it with a new foundation system down below. So that is what basically seismic retrofitting is for a building. Sometimes you can only have 1 column as well. We don't always use moment frames. Really depends on the size of the building, the engineer, and what they design. So you can sometimes do 1 column, sometimes do 2 columns, a moment frame. Sometimes you'll need multiple moment frames. Sometimes your city will have a requirement for how many elements you have to do per what's called a soft line. Soft line is that open row or line of where the parking is. Some buildings have 3 soft lines if it's that open parking area and the sides are exposed as well without any walls. So depending on how many soft lines you have and what your city requires is how we would design the retrofitting elements. Please take notes that, in my opinion, but I think this is pretty objective, your engineering design and the engineering portion, meaning the engineer that you work with, is probably the most important part of your seismic retrofit project. This is because there's more than one way to retrofit a building. And a less experienced or inexperienced engineer would probably put a lot of steel everywhere because they know that will get approved, put steel here, steel there. It would get approved because the city doesn't care if it's over designed. They just want to make sure it at least meets code. But what that does is it causes more disturbance to your parking, to your tenants, may reduce the width of your parking space. Construction will not only take longer, but construction is going to cost more with the more steel that you have. Therefore, an efficient design that obviously, of course, meets code is the most important. So that way you meet code, your building is safer, your construction costs were improved, relatively speaking. And again, you still meet all of the requirements that it takes without messing up all of your parking, disturbing your tenants for too long. The steps required for the retrofitting, and there was something I did not include on here, but I will discuss. The main steps are engineering, like I just described. So that is your design, the blueprints, as they're called, submitting that design to the city, going back and forth in the plan check process, getting them approved. And then once it's approved and the permit is RTI, ready to issue, you can pull the permit, which then allows you to start your construction. And then, of course, start your construction, which will have various inspections, city inspections, and deputy inspections. It's our a third-party inspector that is testing, your materials, your concrete, stuff like that, to make sure that it's following the plan. The engineer also has to do some structural observations in between the phases, but your contractor should take care of all of those inspections and observations during the construction part. The one item that I left out here, which a lot of you may be receiving in the mail, especially if you are in Long Beach, Culver City, Burbank, which are some of the newer cities that are requiring it, is the screening report. So you may have received a notice saying you have to complete this screening report. You can do that. That's fine. Basically, what the screening report does is rule out or confirm if your building is soft story and requires the retrofitting. And it allows the city to take an inventory of the buildings that do require the soft story retrofitting. However, what we usually recommend, which saves you money as well, we can just tell if your building will need the retrofit. We've done maybe 1,000 of them already because, again, we've been doing them for 10 years. You can skip the screening report or include that with the engineering already. So that will save you at least half the cost of the engineering alone, because the screening reports typically require some type of plot plan, elevations, stuff like that that's already going into your engineering. And it's application. We take care of those. However, if we already know that your building is not exempt and you need it, I will also recommend to just sign for the engineering with the screening report. However, I will check, though, if we are offering engineering by itself, because we usually either do your screening report just to help you rule out, or the entire package, meaning screening, engineering, and construction altogether. Or if you have plans done by a third-party engineer, you can send them over and we'll provide you with a construction bid. Long story short, though, these are your required steps. Engineering, submit it to the city, pull your permit, and complete your construction. So here's another project of a completed construction. And I also want to highlight again why the engineer is important here. So as you can see in this building, you see those skinny little pipe columns. Those are the existing support posts, we would say. Underneath them, that you cannot see in the driveway, in the parking area, are the concrete pads. If you can see then on the left photo near the gutter, that is where we placed the column. A lot of people may saying, how did you do that? It's not in that open line. It is actually, because this entire row from that edge of the building to the opposite edge is the soft line. When we're putting steel, they're not for the purpose of gravity load. They're there for the lateral force to support that soft and weak open line. So that is why an experienced engineer is best, because they know we can put it here. And then if you also see in front of the door, so from the new column to a little past that first post, is a new foundation strip. So that's where the grade beam went. So we dug a trench that looks about maybe 15 feet, about 15 feet in length, underground, which the new column is also goes inside of. It's embedded into the building. So it serves the exact purpose as it would anywhere in that row, but we didn't touch your parking. We didn't reduce the width of your parking. We didn't bother anybody that much, hopefully, with the placement of this column. So again, very important, the engineer that you go with, to make sure they know what they're doing, they know where it can go, and that you get a more efficient, not only design, but efficient construction process at the same time. Here's another completed project just to give you guys an idea of what the columns look like after they're lathed, stuccoed, painted, and part of your building. So that wraps it up for the retrofitting portion. I will now get into the balcony inspection laws for SB 721 and SB 326. SB 721 applies to apartment buildings. So if you're a landlord or property manager managing apartment buildings, SB 721 rules apply to you. SB 326 is for HOAs and condos. So condo owners and property management companies that manage condos and HOAs, that applies to you. They're very similar. I'd say maybe 75% of the way, but then they have a few major differences. So you'll want to take note. So the purpose of SB 721 and SB 326 is to inspect your waterproofing systems, which is the deck surface where people walk on, as well as the load-bearing components, which is the entire balcony, walkway, or surface, and those wood joists and wood framing running in. So if you can see on this walkway on the right-hand side, yes, it has your fascia board, it has stucco, everything like that wrapped around this walkway. However, there are floor joists that run through the building, actually, and then they protrude out. That is the part covered with the waterproofing system and all the other elements, your handrail and stucco. So even if your element looks like this, it has wood inside of it, because the law applies to wood framed elements. Steel and concrete are exempt. So a lot of buildings we see have steel concrete stairways that sometimes connect to a shared walkway. That walkway is most likely, 99% I would say, made out of wood, but the steel concrete stairs are exempt. However, their connections to the wood must be inspected. So this is the purpose of the law, to inspect, basically the structural integrity and your waterproofing systems for all of these types of elements. This was originally took effect in 2019. It applies, it's a statewide rule. So it's not something for your city or county or local building and safety department. Most cities are not sending out notices. This is a statewide requirement for all buildings, all multifamily buildings with 3 or more units that have beyond just balconies, I'll get into, I think in the next slide, the other items or elements that must get inspected. And again, this applies to apartments, HOAs, has to be wood framed and 6 feet or higher from the ground. So ground floor or first floor patios are exempt. Little, couple of stairs going into a landing or platform, if it's under 6 feet, that is exempt, even if it's wood. So it just has to be above 6 feet, made out of wood, and meant for human load, basically. So these are the types of elements, since I know everybody just thinks it's a balcony law, but it applies to all exterior elevated elements, walkways, catwalks, landings, stairways, whatever it is, bridges, even that connect the two. And here's some photos of our amazing crew doing part 2 of the inspection. I can kind of glide over that. We must inspect them visually, of course. So beyond just our eyes, we're using moisture meters, infrared technology, and other little devices to check your waterproofing systems again, your hand railing, make sure it's not coming off. We're checking for cracks, signs of water intrusion, like you can see on the left. All of that staining on the underside of that balcony are signs of water intrusion. The only way for that underside to get wet and stained like that is when the waterproofing surface, so the deck above, so that unit above where they are walking, means that there's some type of breach in the waterproofing system. There's a crack, maybe delamination, maybe there's potted plants just soaking it, maybe there's a sloping problem. Whatever it is, water and moisture is getting through. And like I explained before, there's wood joists running through that. Though that's going to be what gets affected by the water. So part 2 after the visual is doing these borehole inspections where we drill a small borehole about 1 to 2 inches in diameter. We insert an endoscopic camera, which is what they're doing. I think on the left is the camera, unless they're still drilling. It's hard for me to see. Sorry. I think it's the camera. That allows us to see the wood framing and rule out if there are further structural problems or if you're in luck and the wood is still in good condition. So based on what we find with the borehole endoscopic testing is what would lead to our recommendation. If it's in good condition, then we definitely advise and recommend that you do some type of resealing or resurfacing of that waterproofing system to seal those cracks and fix whatever issues. If there are problems, again, depends on the severity of the problem. If you'll either need to completely remove and replace the waterproofing system, or B, if structural repairs are required. So it really just depends on what we find. And sometimes we'll see a problem, but we'll need to recommend what's called destructive testing, which is where, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but we would have to remove a larger area, usually, the width or whatever across of the balcony, linear feet, remove all of that stucco so we can accurately observe all of the floor joists. Because if we do see a big problem, we want to see, is it just that 1 or 2 joists that we have a visual of with the camera, or is it all of them, or do they all need to be repaired? So depending again on what we find is what we would recommend. And I'm pretty sure most companies would follow that. I guess after the inspection, once the inspection is completed, which part 1 is the visual, part 2 is that more minimally invasive testing. Once that's done, you are required to receive a compliance report, and that compliance report has to follow a certain rubric or requirements. If you say, so we must rate your waterproofing system, your load-bearing components, and we must provide you with future performance. This is cropped, but underneath it will tell you, like, for example, this unit 1329 balconies was rated a 2. Oops. In our case, a 2 is good. That means good condition. And there's like a little, what's it called? A graph or something to follow underneath that'll say level 2's life expectancy is, such and such years. Level 4 means, okay, this is pretty critical. It's not an emergency, but this should be addressed. Level 5s, which luckily this property did not have, those are what we label immediate threats. And if you have any 5s, normally your city or housing department wants us to alert them and submit the report, alerting them of the level 5, which unit, so that way they can be on top of it to make sure that that immediate threat, that means a big hazard, somebody could actually get hurt, which we do see. There could be holes in the element. The railing is about to fall off. So it's in everybody's best interest to get that fixed ASAP, basically. And SB 721 and SB 326 do have different requirements for the repairs. SB 721 is a little bit more rigid, since that is on the responsibility of the landlord or the property management company, whomever it falls under, to, you know, protect all of the tenants. SB 326, those repair timelines, of course, if you have a level 5, it needs to be addressed. Everything else kind of falls under your CC&Rs, your bylaws, whose responsibility it falls under, the HOA, if it's a common area, or if it's, you know, negligence from an owner, from something they were doing on their balcony. So just give us a call and we can help explain all of that for you. Okay, so that about does it for the retrofitting portion and our balcony laws and inspections and repairs. And now I will lastly merge into our ADUs. So first, I'm going to describe and kind of tie in how you can add ADUs with your seismic retrofit requirements. So right now, for retrofitting, cities like Burbank, that was the ordinance took effect this year. Torrance as well. Long Beach, I believe, is in the screening phase, but they are about to be required in Long Beach. Culver City, I think, took effect maybe a year or two ago. Other areas are Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, Pasadena, West Hollywood, Los Angeles. So there's a lot. Most cities are rolling into this and requiring your retrofitting. So as I mentioned, it has to be in that parking area because that's that soft and weak line. However, if you needed to retrofit, but also wanted to add more units or increase revenue and monthly income, you can convert those spaces into an accessory dwelling unit while also meeting the retrofit requirements and code at the same time. No, this does not mean just adding a unit yourself unpermitted and putting some 2x4s up. That will not meet retrofitting code. It is still a soft story line, even if you have some plywood and 2x4s up there. It still has to be seismically retrofitted. We would do this usually by adding maybe shear walls instead of the columns. However, if you already have steel columns, we could just design those into like the walls of the ADU. They'd be concealed into maybe an external wall or a closet or something like that. So it's okay if you already did it. But please don't think that you can just convert it and then it's not soft story anymore. It still is, because there's no structural support in those walls without the seismic retrofitting elements. So both must be done. 2 separate plans must be done. 2 separate approvals must be done. Here are the general rules for ADUs, which have changed a lot throughout the years. For multifamily and single family, you can either convert existing space, you can convert detached existing space, or you can build new construction that's detached. For multifamily properties, all new construction must be separate from the primary building. For single family homes, you can do new construction that's attached to the house itself, but that is not permitted for multifamily properties. It doesn't matter if it's attached on the ground floor, attached on a deck. You cannot attach new construction to a multifamily property. It has to be converted existing space or separate from the primary building. The general rule of thumb is 25% of your existing number of units for multifamily. For single family, you can do 1 primary ADU and a junior ADU, which then transforms your primary residence into a 3-unit property. For multifamily, it varies depending on the number of existing units you have. However, last year, SB 1211 passed, increasing your detached allowance. It used to be 2 detached ADUs were permitted. Now they allow you to do up to 8, but it cannot exceed your existing number of units. So if you have a 4-plex, you can do up to 4 detached units, space permitting, of course. You can't just throw them anywhere. They still have to adhere to setbacks, building separation, fire department rules, all of that. But if you have 5, 6, 7, 8 existing units, you can do up to 8 detached. If you have a 20-unit building, you can do up to 8 detached, again, space permitting. A couple of years ago, maybe 2 years ago, maybe 3 already, who knows, the height also changed from used to be a 16-foot cap. Now it's 18 feet, 20 feet for your roof pitch. So that has been super helpful with the designs and allowing for a second story. The general size allowance, 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet, sometimes more. But if you go beyond 1,200 square feet, sometimes your FAR kicks in and other rules. But again, space permitting anyways, and we often get the most request for like 500 to 600 square feet is a sweet spot, which then will allow you to do more, optimize your space and your return at the same time. So here's just a little slide just to quickly let you know how many you can do. And yeah, so under 8 units, you can do 1 attached. Again, converting existing space for multifamily. If you have a 20-unit building with, let's say you have large storage rooms, rec rooms, a basement with sufficient height, you can do 5 attached. So you can convert it and split it up into 5 attached. And then if you have a yard or excess space or a parking lot or a parking structure or carport, you can then add that up to 8 detached. However, you can fit legally and safely. For single family homes, again, it is just the one. The reason I'm hesitant is because I'm just trying to remember if there's been any new rules for single family homes. Yes, there's SB9, which there's like 2 versions of SB9. The lot split, which a lot of people have heard of. So you can split the lot, develop the second lot, and then each one will have its own rules and restrictions. But then there, beyond the lot split, you don't have to split the lot. You can do like another primary, which I guess would be a secondary, and then its own ADU. So SB9 is kind of separate from just the ADU version. It allows ADUs on it, but you have to follow those SB9 requirements. Then I think there's SB10 too, but we don't really work with that. So I don't really want to get into it and say anything incorrectly. And then here's just some photos of an ADU that we completed. Maybe this is, I think, the West Adams area. As you can see, it's the primary multifamily building in the back. It had an attached carport in the front. I'm not sure if I have a good angle. Maybe this picture on the right, we'll see that this structure with all the new plywood was that carport. It was then converted to a new unit. And this was pretty much ground up construction. You know what a carport looks like. It's usually just like a flimsy tin roof with a post. So everything was needed here. New footings, new everything, plumbing, sewer, all your mechanicals, everything like that. This is the inside, really beautiful. Here's another project that needed seismic retrofitting in that tuck under parking area, but they wanted to maximize, meet both the retrofit requirements as well as the ADU. This was during the project. As you can see here on the right, sorry, it's small, but those cages, you see those rebar cages, that's the grade beam I was describing earlier, how we trench underground, because again, this is why you still have to do the retrofitting, even if you're converting it, because if you just convert it without doing this, you don't have any type of support and it's still very dangerous. So not to mention illegal. So this is us doing the grade beam, meeting all the retrofitting codes. And then this is the unit. So it's really gorgeous. I think this is like a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, in-unit laundry. And a couple of years ago, it was renting for like $3,500 a month, if not more. So who knows what the market rent is now? I mean, a lot of you would probably know what it is now. So I'm sure it's even more than that. So your value just continues to grow year after year, especially with adding these brand new units. And here it is from the outside. So you would never tell it was that like old crummy garage. It's been retrofitted. It looks really nice, cohesive with the rest of the building as well. So that about does it. So that is my presentation for today about all things One Structural and our divisions Retrofit 1, ADU 1, and Balcony 1. So give us a call or email us if you need any services. If you've already done your inspection, send us your report so we can review, prepare repair bids, waterproofing bids, whatever your report flagged. If you did your inspection with us, we usually follow up with that anyways. And something about us, we always make sure that if we're recommending something to you, you see photos, videos, whatever it is of exactly why you need it. So that way, you know, we're just not throwing out recommendations from nowhere. It is something that the building needs. Maybe it's for safety issues, whatever it is. We would always show you the proof. We're located in Tarzana. You can come visit us there. We offer complimentary lunch and learns, presentations. We'll hop into your HOA or board meeting if you need to, whether that's in person or via Zoom. For our inspections, we, you know what, let me pop back in here. Hi. For inspections, we serve the entire state of California. So if you're watching from Oakland, San Jose, San Francisco, we do the inspections there. Structural repairs, you know, anything heavier that takes longer, pretty much Southern California, we focus on. And again, if you already did your inspection, we can review the report. If you have engineering plans or designs, architect designs for either the retrofitting or ADUs, send that over. We provide bids for that. Seismic retrofitting, we do all services from your engineering, permitting, and construction. ADUs, same thing, or just bidding on approved plans. So that does it for today. I'm going to put our phone number in the chat as well as our email. So you can, even if this is the retrofit email, again, we're all the same company no matter what our division is. So thank you again. I'm Helen with One Structural. We hope to work with you soon. We do package deals on portfolios. We do everything that I just described within all of our services. So thank you again, Helen with One Structural, and we hope to work with you soon. Happy July, and I hope everybody has a safe and fun summer. Bye, everybody.